Hey guys, I'm Marina and welcome to FCTV. Today I'm chatting to our property director Nik Sproal and we're talking about gentrification and how you can use it to identify a property with long-term capital growth. So Nik, you've been in the property industry for 17 years. What is gentrification and why does a first home buyer like myself need to know about it?
Looking at it really simply, it's an area undergoing transition from a previous usage or a type of resident to a new usage or a type of resident. And that could be a couple of things. It could be an area like Carlton that was a classic gentrification space where it was all old commercial and industrial usages, and then people started to see how attractive it was and all the benefits of it, and everyone started to flock to the space and getting that, that first mover advantage of getting into the land when it was really cheap. Or an area like, say, a Brunswick where it's all predominantly residential, but it becomes increasingly attractive as areas close to the city are much more expensive. So it can happen in various different ways, but the benefit first and foremost is that anyone who gets in there early gets that ability to really set themselves up for long-term growth.
Who do you see kind of as the typical first movers in this piece then?
Generally, it's people like yourself. It's that classic first home buyer who is kind of prepared to take that risk and going into a new area that maybe has an unsavory vibe about it or has a reputation, but it's got all these other benefits that really outweigh it. So typically it's the first home buyer who wants to get in when they can afford it and sees that potential for growth, or the investor who's looking at it from exactly the same perspective. So the first home buyer can resell in 5 to 10 years time when they're moving into the family home and get really great benefit out of it, and the investor can just utilize that as a platform for further growth.
What first home buyers and investors have in common is that they're both a lot less risk averse as well.
Yeah, definitely. Look, I think those guys have both fit that portfolio of people who are willing to take that opportunity, but it's about taking the right opportunity at the right time.
Yeah, and would you say Collingwood is a good example of a suburb that's undergoing gentrification now? Or?
It's a perfect example. It's an area where 10 years ago you wouldn't have even looked at it because it just was too dangerous and risky, and it had a lot of commercial usage in there. Whereas now with Smith Street exploding the way it has and Gertrude Street and all of the benefits of that proximity to the city, but its inherent character as well, Collingwood's a fantastic location to be able to get in on the ground floor now and just watch that investment grow over time.
Yeah, and kind of people have pretty mixed feelings about gentrification, but how do you see kind of property prices changing?
I guess, taking the challenge of the people who've always been in the area and seeing that negative of gentrification, the reality is what it does is it really makes property prices grow, because there's all these other usages that come in and around it. It's not just the residential, it's the restaurants and bars and cafes and all the other lifestyle benefits that come in off that new audience coming in. And what it creates is a fantastic environment to live in, and ultimately what that does is push property prices up.
Awesome. I would have thought personally that all these restaurants and bars would have been kind of a main driver of gentrification, but you're saying it comes from a rezoning perspective? Yeah,
typically I think when you're opening a restaurant or bar, you've kind of got to have the audience there. So typically it's the people that start coming in there first, and the other things get attracted around them. So it's a really interesting process to watch unfold, and it's all about understanding some of those early key drivers and getting in at the right time.
In terms of kind of property, do you see kind of the product mix change in a suburb as it undergoes this process?
Typically what happens is you see a lot of 1-bedroom and smaller 2-bedroom apartments early, because it's all about getting in at a good price point. And then as the area evolves and that gentrification process matures, then you start to see the larger product come in, like the bigger 2-beds and the 3-beds and even the penthouse product. And areas like Collingwood are just on that cusp of transition now, where they're moving from the entry price product into the more expensive product. But typically it's that stuff that's cost effective to the first home buyer and the investor.
Yeah, that's interesting, because I've been kind of looking at property in Collingwood myself, and you are seeing a big mix of penthouses, so definitely a different type of buyer is coming into that suburb.
Yeah, it's the East Melbourne buyer who couldn't afford East Melbourne but loves the idea of still being close but having all that kind of the urban vibe of Collingwood as well.
Yeah, awesome.